1 year at NYU Law right now costs over $123,000. That's not just the tuition, of course, that's the number NYU itself publishes as the all-in cost, including tuition, fees, rent, food, the whole shebang for just one of 3 years of law school. Now, here's the thing most people haven't realized yet. On July 1st, the way almost every law student has paid that number for the last 20 years quietly ends. The cost, of course, is not going anywhere, but what ends is who is giving you the money to pay that cost. Now, there is a second thing, and that's what I want you to actually think about. The LSAT score you're grinding for right now, the one that hasn't changed at all, just became the most valuable thing you own, more valuable than it was a year ago, and I'm going to show you exactly why. But let me back up first, of course. For almost 20 years, the federal government did something almost most people never even thought about. If you got into a graduate or a professional program, the government would lend you the entire cost of attendance, no matter whatever the school charged, with no real cap, no credit check that mattered. The program was called Grad Plus, and it worked like a blank check. Now think about what a blank check does to a school. If every student who walks in the door can borrow whatever you decide to charge, what stops you from charging more? Nothing, of course. And that is the argument economists have made for years. When the lender will cover any price, the price goes up. And law school tuition went up and up and up year after year with almost nobody pushing back. And so we ended up here, where 1 year at a top law school is over 120 grand. Almost nobody even blinked at the price because the money was always there to borrow. But that blank check is getting torn up. It is ending. Last year, in July of 2025, Trump passed the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, and buried inside it was the biggest change to graduate borrowing in a generation. And the date it kicks in is July 1st of this year, 2026. That's basically right now, depending on when you're watching this. So Grad Plus, the blank check, is going to be gone for new borrowers. In its place, you're going to have hard caps on what you can borrow, and law students get dropped into a very specific bucket. The law treats a JD like a professional degree, similar to medicine. So a new law student can borrow $50,000 a year from the federal government. That is the ceiling, with a lifetime limit of $200,000 across the whole degree. And you can see this right now on the financial aid page of nearly any law school in the country. UC Law San Francisco lays it out in plain English. JD students are professional students, 50 grand a year. Grad Plus is gone for anyone who hasn't already borrowed. And so let's do the math, because that's what matters, right? These are real numbers, big money. NYU all in, $123,000 a year. 3 years of that approaches about $370,000. But the most the federal government will hand out to a new law student is 50 grand a year over 3 years, only $150,000. So 370K in cost minus 150K in federal loans, that leaves a gap more than $200,000 at the priciest schools per student, with no federal money left to fill that in. That gap right there could be a house down payment in most of the country. It's a paid off mortgage somewhere cheaper. It's the difference between starting your law degree clean and starting it with a hole so deep the government won't even stand behind it anymore. So if you're wondering, I'm already in law school, is this going to affect me? Probably not, because there is a legacy rule you're grandfathered in. If you're already started off with the borrowing, you can keep borrowing the old way up to the full cost through the middle of 2029 or until you finish, whichever comes first. So if you're a current student, you're probably grandfathered in. But if you're applying to law school right now, if you're taking the LSAT this summer or fall, if you're aiming for a seat for next year, you are a brand new borrower. And law school deans are also on the hook for this because they're going to be affected too. For 20 years, the law school's budget leaned on the assumption that any student they could admit could borrow whatever the school charged them. And that assumption is done. And so now the school is in a tough position. They can cut the price by giving more scholarship money, or they can watch the students it admitted shrug and walk somewhere else to a school that pays them scholarship money. Schools, of course, hate cutting their prices, but they also hate having empty seats, especially if they are tuition dependent. And not every school is getting impacted the same way, of course, because the rich schools, the ones that have billion-dollar endowments, they can absorb the hit. They'll discount tuition a bit and move on. But the ones I would watch closely are in the middle and below. where they have a high sticker price, a very small endowment, and the class was borrowing the full cost of tuition. Those schools can't knock tens of thousands of dollars off the tuition without bleeding, without hurting, without taking a hit to their bottom line. And so some of those schools are going to shrink. A few might just not make it at all. They might end up shutting down or consolidating, merging. I'm not going to name names here, but I can tell you that when the easy money disappears, the fragile schools crack first. So when you pick a school now, your considerations beyond price should be whether the school will still be standing in 5 years. So the system just handed you leverage. If you see it, you can negotiate your tuition because the school is more desperate than you are. The school needs you more than you need them. And that's why your LSAT score just got more valuable, even though the content of the LSAT has not changed. You can go for tuition, or you can take out discounts, or you could take private loans. Private loans are a big problem, though, because, of course, they take high interest rates and they don't have income-driven repayment the way that public or government loans do. You don't get public service loan forgiveness on a private loan. And so what you want to do instead is get money from the school in the form of scholarships. Law schools live and die by their place in the U.S. News rankings, which factors in their median LSAT score. U.S. News weighs the median LSAT score heavily, and every year, admissions fights like crazy to push that median up even by a single point. So a school that's at a 168 median will straight up pay an applicant with a 172 median to enroll because that one applicant tugs the median upward. If you are above a school's 75th percentile, you're not a charity case anymore. You become a metric they need to hit. They need you to help raise their medians, to help raise their standing in the U.S. News rankings. And so that same LSAT score that a year ago might have just gotten you in now decides whether the school writes you a check or whether you signed for 200 grand of private debt. And timing also matters here. Law school applications jumped up year over year for 2 consecutive years, the highest in over a decade, and that's LSAC's count, not mine. More than 100 law schools saw their applications climb 20% or more in a single year. So there are more people chasing law school than there have been in a generation, all competing for that same pot of scholarship money at the exact same moment the federal blank check disappears, and that scholarship money becomes the main way for you to dodge the private loan trap. So there's more competition, less easy money. In that environment, the people who win the scholarships are the ones with the LSAT score flat out. And so for every school on your list, I want you to write down what I would call your gap number. You take your full all-in cost of attendance for all 3 years of law school, subtract $150,000, which is what you can borrow from the government. What's left, that difference, is your gap number. That's the hole you personally have to fill. Then you want to see which law schools will give you scholarship money to cover that gap fully. It's going to be based on your getting an LSAT score and a GPA, ideally both, above the 75th percentile of the law schools that you're targeting. Not just the median, the 75th percentile. And if your GPA is below the median or below the 75th, you want to offset that with a higher LSAT score to compensate. And if you've taken the LSAT and didn't hit that number, you can retake. Law schools do not average multiple LSAT scores. They only take into consideration the highest LSAT score on your record, and there's no downside to retaking for that reason. The LSAT's offered 8 times a year. Coming up, we've got August, September, October, November. You can take any one of those LSATs and still apply to law school this fall. Even the LSAT in January or February is not too late. But applying earlier is better than applying later, all else being equal. When you apply earlier, it's easier to get in, and there's also more scholarship money available. And if you want my help getting your LSAT score up, getting above those medians, I'm happy to help you out. I'm offering a free LSAT tutoring lesson for everybody watching this, now or later. You can book that free tutoring lesson with me personally at unpluggedprep.com/start. The link is below the video on YouTube, pinned in the chat on YouTube, in my bio on TikTok and IG.